So let's talk a little bit about color correction and color correcting your footage. And I'd like to show you a little bit more of an advanced way to do this. And none of these clips are horrible, um, but let me show you how we can go in. So let's just grab any piece of footage and I'll show you the process of color correcting. Like this one's a really bright. So let's just drag this clip over to our timeline, whichever clip you want. It doesn't really matter. The principle is the same and it'll look the same here. All right. Um, so what I want to do is I actually want to go into the color tab. And we haven't used this yet, so let's click on the color tab and let's just make sure that we have our clip selected and we're over this clip here. All right. So let's take a look here. All right. So what you have, once we go into color, you have the Lumetri scopes here. All right. Now, we won't get into all of this and what this is for introductory class and what grading is, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to use what we call scopes. All right. And they're better. They actually measure it based off colors and, the values of those colors, because we can't detect that with the human eye. So what I'm going to do is let's go into Lumetri scopes. All right. And this is what we want to look at. All right. So let's hit the wrench and I'm going to deselect parade. And you may not have this, right? Where I only have this, where it's only the waveform RGB. So if you need to hit that wrench, go ahead. And we just want to make sure that the waveform RGB is selected here. All right. So what we have here, if you notice, you have 0 to 255 and 0 to 100 over here. We're going to pay attention to this. What values do we know goes from 0 to 255? Well, I think RGB colors, right? So red, green, blue. Now, what this chart is representing is the waveform, the black and whites, all right? So at 0, what you have is pure black. This is pure black. And then at 255, these are your pure whites, all right? So what we want to do, these portions that are really close to the top here, these are pure whites. These are your midtones. We don't really want to bring that up all the way. You'll see that we'll have a lot of issues. And then down here is the pure blacks. So what I want to do, the whites seem okay. We don't have a lot of issues with the whites, and yours may look different. So just base it off your actual chart here. All right. Any clip that you want is fine. All right. Hopefully you're shooting good in the camera, and we're going to get your settings right to where you won't have to do this as much. All right. But what I have here is we want to go in and we want to take a look at this. We want to bring our pure whites, which are down here, to down here. That's our pure white there. So in order to do this, we need to go into curves, right? All right. And what you'll see is that you'll see the actual white, you'll see red, green, and blue here. All right. And this is an advanced step, so hopefully you won't have to do a lot of correction, but it's good to sort of know these things. And what we want to do is we want to click on the white here. And the white, this is going to indicate our pure blacks and white. So up here is pure whites, and down here is pure blacks. So what I want to do is I want to come to this point here. All right, and you can look through any of those B-roll pieces of footage, and a lot of them probably need a little bit more black in them. But what I want to do, as I hover over that point, you will notice that it lets me gives me this circle here. And what I want to do is I want to gradually pull this to the right here, and I want to bring this down. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing down my pure black. So you can see around the dog's nose, the pure blacks are good here. Now, if you need more white, that would be found up here. So what I can do is I can click and I can drag this, and that's going to bring my white values up. Now you can see if you do it way too much, it's going to hurt you here. But we just want it to touch right up there. So I'm just going to bring it right there, just a notch, right? So now my pure blacks are pure black and my pure whites are pure white. And you can do this by your eye with the help of the scope here. All right. Now, there'll be times where we will want to adjust the red, green, and blue here. So in order to work with that, what I can do is I can come in and hit my wrench. And what we want is the Parade RGB. So I'll click on Parade RGB. And if you want this one to go away, we can make it go away. So let me click waveform. And what you notice, all clips are going to look different. Like if I go to this clip, it looks different. But the great thing about this is that these clips, you want to make sure that they're even wherever they really are. All right. So back on this clip, it seems that my red, green, and blue values are actually pretty even. But let's say if they weren't, right? In order to adjust these values, let's say I want to select my red here, I could go in and I could click right in the middle. And what that's going to allow me to do, let's say if I bring this down, it's going to bring my red values down. So what I'm essentially doing is taking red out. If I push this up, I'm bringing red into my shot. So we're going to keep this probably about right there where it was. There's nothing really too bad about these clips. So let's say if I wanted to bring some of my greens down, I could click on green, and we can go to that center mark, and I could go in and bring my greens down. And you see it as I push up, it's adding a ton of green here. Not necessarily what I want. So I want to make sure that this is sort of even with the red. We want to balance, and color correction is all about balance, right? And then we have our blues. So if I click on blue, I may want to add a little more blue to my shot here. If I bring this down, you can see that now it's washing out my blues here. So I can bring this maybe up just a little bit, and I'm adjusting my blues. So what we've done here is we're balancing out our colors. So let me take another clip. You can pick any clip that you like. And this one doesn't look too bad, honestly. And we'll leave the curves alone, but I'll show you basic color correction. So if that confused you a little bit, let's click on basic color correction. And let's take a look here. All right. Now let's look up tables, and those are like, if you want to think of it like filters for your shot. So if you wanted to save it, Private Ryan look, or those types of things, we could add that type of stuff. But what you have here is you have temperature. And what this is doing is I can warm up my shot a little bit. So if I wanted to make it a little warmer, I could bring this in a little bit. And tint is gonna, so you can see as I'm moving this, I'm making my greens a little more vibrant. Then pink is never something I really go towards, just to be careful. Now you also have exposure, and what that's doing, this is actually changing your blacks and your whites. So if I wanted to make this a little bit darker, I could bring my exposure down and then bring this up a little bit. All right. And then you have contrast. So notice what's happening to my background here. It's adding a little bit more depth into some of the colors. So I crank that up, and this is looking actually pretty good here. All right. And then if I go into my highlights, I could go in and what this is doing is this is adjusting the bright spots of your spot. And then the shadows is the dark spots. So I wanted to bring the shadows in a little bit. And it's almost like we're doing a quick little grade here. And you can see that this is completely different from this one. And that's just by adjusting these values. And a lot of this is a matter of taste and what you want as far as going through that. So this is another way where you can adjust, without having to use those curves down here. So if that curves kind of confused you, just come up to your basic correction and you can come in. If you need to warm up your shot, you can warm it up. If you need to make it a little darker, you can bring that down. If you need to lighten it up, you can mess with that. You can also play around with your shadows and your highlights. So remember, highlights are the bright spots, shadows are the dark spots, and then your white and your black values. So the same thing that we sort of did in the curves here, just a lot simpler. So I know this was a long video, but hopefully you're getting stuff out of the camera. But if you want to go in and play around with this stuff, these are some advanced techniques, but I thought I would throw those in there a little bit just so you could play around with this and play around with your footage. All right, but other than that, all right, cool deal.